Welcome to the study session to learn from Chris Groner and Tina Mangine and former City Councilman David Brennan. We're going to get an update on five what's being described as transformational projects. What kind of investment has already been committed and what we need to know and learn to get them to the finish line. So I think Chris and Tina, you're ready to present, right? Sure. We're going to turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Oh, I guess I'm up.
Okay.
So we want to take a moment to thank you. We wanted to take a moment to first thank you for your support and investment in these transformational projects that we'll go through. And we wanted to highlight what we think are the five most impactful, and I can confidently use the term transformational projects in the city. On the first page, you'll see little red dots, which highlight where these five projects are. And two are on the east side, two are on the west side, and one is, it's on the east side, it's on French, and between French and Holland, so really it's three east side, although I call that one downtown. So if we go through these, and I'll go through them relatively quickly until we get to the big ones, but as you know, HANDS is looking at a housing project on East Lake Road. It's the old hammer mill site. We happen to own that property. Phase one of that project is a $22 million investment. The city has committed $300,000 in home funds and a $3 million city loan. Phase one of that project will bring 40 new homes to the Lower East Side. And they're going to be nice homes with a nice view. They are a mix of single family and apartments. And that's only phase one. There's a second phase to that, which will bring another 40 or 50 homes. So that's going to
50 in the second phase.
Yeah. So a nice project there. The Slovakia Opportunity Park out on Downing Avenue, which we've talked about before. This is now in its final design stage. There will be a commercial aquaponics enterprise that will produce both greens and walleye, which is very hard to grow in an aquaculture setting, but we've found a firm out of Harrisburg that's able to do that. So they have a contract with Curtsy Foods now to buy 100% of what they produce. So that's nice. We are also building on that property a community greenhouse for the neighbors and the residents who will be able to grow their native foods. There'll be no charge to them. We're just building a separate building for them. They can operate their own little enterprise there, do farmers markets, whatever it is that they want to do.
So there's already a company in place doing aquaponic?
Yes, we have a contract with a company called Intag, I-N-T-A-G. They're out of Harrisburg. They do the aquaponics and aquaculture. So we're looking at a 10 to 15,000 square foot commercial greenhouse. So it'll be big. These folks will also run it for the first year or two while they teach and train local residents how to do it, because it's pretty scientific, right? It's not just a typical greenhouse. Depending on the ultimate size, but about 12 to 15 jobs is what they're saying. Because Curtsy is so interested, particularly in the walleye, we are exploring a larger aquaculture center. And if that happens, then of course there'll be more jobs, but it's also more costly up front. So we're looking at that right now. But this is a good project. It's right across from Roger Young Park, which I know there's interest in revamping. So it's a great project. We've put the down payment on the facility. The engineers are doing their their work, and we anticipate breaking ground this spring. So,
Tina, before you go on, I know this has been a long talked about project. When was Slovakia Opportunity Park first created? So it's finally coming to fruition. So do you know what the year is, Chris, when that was created?
it was 2004.
Wow.
It's been almost 20 years.
Yeah.
So I was actually in City Hall at the time. We dedicated back in 2004. Had one tenant, Paragon, and that's still the only tenant there. So we are finally, moving this project forward.
Thank you.
So MCIC, the Minority Community Investment Coalition, which is made up of MLK, Booker T, and the Urban Erie, own the property. And this is a social enterprise, so the goal is that the facility will make money, and it will then benefit the individual centers so that they will become more self-sufficient. Yep, exactly. So the former Quinty paper at 16th and French, we purchased it with $100,000. We have demolished the building and the smokestack this summer. All of that cost about $900,000. This was paid for by both an ARP grant from the city and the county. That's how we were able to do this project. There's some money left, which we will use for land remediation and leveling. We've done soil and water testing, and we haven't got the results back from the lab. But once we get those results back, we can then determine next steps. We do want to level it, fill it, so that we can have, some. Right. So we don't know what we can do. We have had inquiries to purchase it, or purchase part of it. I know there's interest in a park from the neighbors, but we can't make any of those decisions yet because we don't know how bad And if you look at the next page, just a couple photographs of what that facility looked like. On the first photograph, everything you see on the ceiling and walls was asbestos. And there was a large homeless encampment on that, and they were living in there. And then there was asbestos in the ground in the basement, which is what that third picture represents. They had to dig an entry into the basement. So the asbestos company, that's a quote from the asbestos company, who said it was the single worst case he had ever seen. So if we do nothing else with that, we have eliminated a serious blight in the neighborhood. The fourth project in the city is, we're now on to the west side, which is at 15th and Myrtle. It's about 4 acres of land. We've spent the last several years, we tore down the building, as you can see on the right, and cleaned that up. We got Act 2 clearance from the state, so that property is clean. We are going out to bid tomorrow. It'll be advertised tomorrow for construction of a 90,000 square foot warehouse for Berry Plastics, who is across the street. The whole project will cost about $9 million. At least that's the estimate. We'll see what comes in from the bids. So it's a $9 million project. It will also create about a dozen or so jobs. Probably the most important thing about this is that it would secure Berry in that neighborhood for another 20 years, because it'll be a 20-year lease that we operate for them. So
that's really I just want to stress that they've got so many locations worldwide that they don't necessarily need to be here, and so we need to make sure that they have the space they need to grow and that they have the efficient layout that they need to continue to be cost competitive here, because they've got a lot of options, and we want to make sure we can
And Chris, maybe if you
accommodate their
could let
growth.
people know, how many people are currently employed at Berry, and that these are good paying jobs, and I know a large number of the employees come from the neighborhood. I've had a tour of it. Part of the original building is the Heisler
Locomotives, that's right.
plant from, I forget how old is that, more than 100 years old. The rest of the facility, I mean, that's also been upgraded inside. It's an amazing piece of state-of-the-art to look at how they make their caps for beverages and other types of products. So,
Yeah, they're
and I
very-
think that if anybody's interested, if is this the same manager there, Bob? I mean, I would think he would be more than happy to take any council members on a tour so they can see what exists now, how they've improved the landscaping at the behest of the Sisters of St. Joseph Neighborhood Network, who suggested it. So, I don't know, you've made me a big fan of this company and what they're doing. So,
Well, they're definitely an anchor in the neighborhood, and we worked with them on the west end, the smaller expansion. That was 27,000 square feet, and so that's been 5 or 6 years now, but worked with them on that, and that was really just to get them by a little bit longer, but they quickly outgrew that, and so.
How long have you been here?
In the
it had different
in
names,
the form of
remember?
Berry.
It went through a series of
Right, it's
sales.
been different
I
ownership.
would
but
say,
in
I want to say 40,
Yeah.
50 years,
the,
something like
in the
that.
form of Berry, I think it was under Berry's ownership for the last 8 to 10 years, maybe.
Yeah, they change names, but yeah,
Yeah.
they have sites literally all over the world, and I think they employ about 140 people.
Yeah. It's about 140.
So they're a large employer, and they are very good partners with the Sisters of St. Joseph and in that neighborhood. So, but this is a big project. We had been working with them off and on for years, but over the past year and a half, and started to bid it out before, but we had to take a step back. They did for various company reasons, but we are now ready to move forward. So this is an important project, and it is close. So, and then there's the former Erie Malibu Iron that most of you have seen. Behind you is a, kind of a sketchy photograph. But you can see on the photograph behind you the portion that we're going to keep, the other way. The portion in red is the section we're keeping, and everything else is going to be torn down. They actually started yesterday to mobilize equipment to begin the demolition. We have spent the last year and a half clearing out and preparing it for demolition. So if you, I can get you a drawing that has that layout. Yeah, right. So we have, this project was way bigger than any of us anticipated when we purchased it. I think when we took you on a tour, we talked about it. 800 drums of waste, 240 totes, 400 crates, which, thanks to Michael Keys, we donated to the community. 3,000 pounds of liquids and sludge, some of which had to be shipped to landfills as far away as Dallas, Texas. 6 oil tanks. If you go through the pictures, you'll see those. 4 floors of coal and coal ash, and 40 tons of trash and debris, just general trash and debris.
Well, the day that we closed on it and got the keys, we walked in and just stood there in silence for like a couple minutes and kind of looked around and had to let it sink in a little bit.
What had we done?
Yeah. and then we snapped out of it. But,
Yeah. So Michael and Liz, you were on one of the early tours and saw how bad it was. So you wouldn't recognize it now on the interior, but it's, you know, it's been a long year and a half of cleaning up. We did remove the bridge last spring, as you may recall. Even that was a bigger job than anticipated because it started to collapse as the crane was pulling it up, and they had to freeze in mid-air and bring in 2 additional cranes, one of which had to come from Cleveland. So ended up finally taking it all down at like 3 in the morning. So everything with this project's been bigger and more intense than we ever anticipated. But
Tina, I wanted to just either make a point or ask you a question. When you say, you know, what have we done? But doing nothing, if you think about it, probably really wasn't an option, because if you look at Quin T with all that asbestos, and that caught on fire how many times? I mean, here you have a place that used to make paper and it's catching on fire, and who knows what it's spewing into the neighborhood. But the same thing here. If you do nothing, you still have all these materials close to residences, you know, a busy 12th Street corridor. I mean,
the school.
and the fact that this is a company that just walked away from it again, you know, the one that made the brake drums, and they came in and they were going to be committed to Erie, and then boom, they're gone. So it's not our fault that, certainly not the fault of anybody in Erie, that these kinds of things happened after there were promises, after this place changed ownership. And
this type of industrial blight is all over the Northeast and Midwest in particular. That's why they call it the Rust Belt, right? And that's why there are special programs at the state and federal level to help pay for these things, because they are everywhere. This was, I think, probably had more debris than we anticipated, and is usually left behind, but companies leave behind this kind of mess all the time. So fortunately, we were in a position with your help and with the EPA grant we got and some other funding to begin to tackle it. So $2.5 million to clean it up and tear it down. That's the total. We couldn't have done it without the city. You know, you committed $1.25 million. The county committed $750,000. The county land bank helped pay for the bridge to come down. And then we used $430,000 in the EPA Brownfields grant to help pay for some of that. So, you know, it was a, pardon me?
The owner walked away untouched.
They walked away a long time ago, unfortunately. So the demolition will take about 6 months. And what will be left is what you see over there outlined in red. We employed Dave, your old colleague here, to do a feasibility study to see what we could retain. So Dave could probably speak to this better than me, but he and his team and a team of engineers came in and evaluated the entire site and determined that only that section was structurally sound enough to maintain. And I really wanted to maintain something because I wanted to honor Erie's history, but I did not want to save it just for the sake of saving it, right? So
Now looking at the Cherry Street side there?
that is 12th Street. The Cherry Street side is what's saved, yes.
Yeah.
Where the 4-story office building is and some adjacent, that's like a dozen different buildings that have been added together.
Yeah, that first section from the office building actually is a nice production manufacturing section, right? High ceilings, you have the capacity to have a crane in there, and so those high ceilings, that's going to make that space very valuable. That first, whatever you want to call it, off of the office building section. So it's nice that is, at this point, we believe we can salvage that.
I mean, the structure with the main walls, they're pretty solid. With the structural steel, some will have to be replaced. As you can imagine, leaking roofs for years and years slowly, degrade the steel. So that's what we're carefully looking at now, structural engineers, to see what needs to be replaced. So we're kind of going through that process. But according to our engineers, we had several teams of structural engineers review it. It is a solid structure. It was built to last. And there are things that we need to do. Of course, there's some investment required there. But to rebuild that building would be way more dollars than you could even imagine, given the high spaces, given the structural steel, given the quality of construction with the walls, et cetera. There's a lot of square footage there.
So Dave and his team did a feasibility study, and last year, about a whole year ago, my gosh, I didn't realize it's been that long.
Yeah, quick time passes.
Yeah, and determined that to renovate and put a roof on it, do everything that you need to do, would be about $20 million. So that's what we're looking at. And we call that phase 2 because all the parts that are going to be torn down will eventually be rebuilt as a build-to-suit for future businesses.
Does the preservation of the eastern portion of the building, that would affect the LERTA? So that part would be tax abated, the rest of it would be redevelopment, right?
But how you're asking about the connection to the historical aspect of it, or?
Yeah, the historic, by preserving that space, we'll continue to be able to tax that.
Yes.
Whereas the space that's going to be torn down and rebuilt will have tax abatement. So the preservation benefits us on the tax side.
Correct. Yeah, the new construction, of course, you could learn of, and the existing will be renovation of an existing structure.
So yes.
But that would depend on the current valuation, which at the dilapidated stage could be nil, and so it probably the whole thing would be.
You would reassess it though once it was all done. It would get reassessed. We're committed to as a entity to pay taxes. We think it's important. We won't seek. I mean, we're a nonprofit. We could go after nonprofit status, but we won't do that. We think the right thing to do is to pay taxes.
What's going to be in here? We were in Pittsfield, outside of Mass, this summer, and they took an old plant, and one of the things they did was to put in a very comfortable theater, multiples of 10-foot tall type thing, and the people were flocking all over.
Yeah.
Coming in there.
I mean, do you want me to? Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Only because we're getting calls now asking, when do you think that space will be available? And, our vision is light industrial, nothing heavy, not heavy manufacturing, but it could be businesses that, are more on the high-tech end. Maybe they do kits, maybe they do, shipping, warehousing, things like that, but light industrial. And example that I have is a couple weeks back, I met with a business owner, came into Erie. He's from out of state, and I was looking for some square footage in the city because he wanted to be near an anodizer. And right across the street, we have an anodizer, and that's what put Erie on his map. Unfortunately, we did not have the square footage available at the time, and he has since moved on to North Carolina. It's an opportunity we lost because I did not have square footage available. It's turnkey ready at the right time. So I think there'll still be a manufacturing tilt because we are still a manufacturing town, and that's okay. And that's what brought this individual here. And this would have been about 25 jobs, and he would have taken about 30,000 square feet of the total space. But I think it'll be a mixture of things. We're open to a lot of possibilities, but the one thing we're not open to is real heavy manufacturing, anything that's going to be polluting.
We wanted to create a small business park, so it'll have mixed use. There'll be a lot of different businesses in it. I don't see any entertainment. I don't think we'll have food.
The place I was talking about, there was a yoga studio.
Yeah.
Law offices.
We've had law office. We've had a law firm inquire. We've had a couple manufacturers. So we want it to be a job generator, right? We want to create jobs there. We want to have ready-to-go space, because we know as a community that's the single biggest Achilles heel that we have, is that we don't have ready-to-go space for new businesses. So what we're saving is about 78,000 square feet. That whole building right now is about 200,000 square feet. So we're saving 78,000, and then we will rebuild probably another 75 to 80, depending, because it'll be built to suit. So all told, it might be 160, 170,000 when we're done. We don't know, but just to have 78,000 ready to go square feet in another year or so is pretty good.
That's the expectation, is that the reserved space will be ready to go in a year?
Well, Dave is going to say no, and he's probably right. But I always give I give these guys like really aggressive timelines, and they just look at me.
I think especially with contractors being so busy with a lot of the shortages in staffing. There's a lot of companies that are very busy in town, and if you put this on their plate now, they would be really looking at their clock saying, I'm not sure when. So it is kind of, I'm just saying that because it is challenging, because everyone's busy. And that's why.
No, actually,
So how long are we actually talking?
actually, you once told me 18 months from demolition completion, so that would be 2 years out.
Yeah.
And that's probably much more realistic.
And it's because there's several phases. I mean, we really need to get the envelope secured, with the roof, with the structure, the outer, all that kind of the shell of the building, and then we would then work on the interior. So it's kind of been a phasing type of thing. And then also, working with the new site for the new buildings. We don't know what's going to go there yet, but we're going to kind of look at some scenarios for what could be built, looking at the parking requirements, looking at green space, looking at the outdoor space. So it isn't just going to be filled with buildings, of course. So a lot of those things we're looking at.
But the one thing I think we could be doing a year from now is starting to secure leases. I think because businesses need to have a certain level of certainty, where am I going to be? And so it's a little early yet to be talking that, but I think a year from now, once the work is underway, they're going to be able to start visualizing this. So a year from now, I'm hoping that I'll be in discussions and actually finalizing some leases.
Yeah.
So.
Is Purple a contract for that parking lot? Really big part for the football games and stuff?
They own that parking lot, but we have talked to them about possibly using it during the daytime for overflow parking. We'll see. So we've secured a little over $9 million so far towards the $20 million, and we have about $8.1 million in applications pending. So if we are successful, we'll be pretty darn close to that 20 million. So we feel good about the 9 million that we've secured really quickly. So this project is the largest that we're doing. The Hands project is of equivalent nature. That's about 22 million. This project will be 22 plus million when it's done as well, for phase one or phase two, just for that 78,000 square feet. So we're in good stead.
So the 20,000 gets us up to the point that the 78,000 square feet on the eastern portion is secure and leasable, and then the rest is down, and then the addition, and then from that point, we're talking about building.
We're talking, yes. So each new, right, that 20 million gets that saved portion done and leasable.
Right.
So that we can get businesses in there. And one thing to point out is if ABC company says, I want 30,000 square feet, they will pay for the build out.
Right. So even though the second phase, the west end where you're going to have the new construction, that may be another 25 million or so. That's going to be with individual businesses. So you're going to come to me and you're going to say, I need 25,000, I need a certain ceiling height, I need a certain build out. That's when we work to finance that through the business. Now we'll be a conduit for for certain, grants and loans and things like that. But that's going to be worked through the individual businesses and designed specifically for what you need and what you need. And some of the pictures you see, it looks like there's 4 pods. Some of those may be connected. If the right business comes along and says, you know what, I want half of that, and maybe those 2 are connected. We don't know yet, but the funding for that is going to be on a project by project basis and financed with each individual business. They're going to have their budget. We're going to work with them probably with low interest loans, maybe some grants, but that'll start to take shape after the east end is ready and turnkey.
So you're on the Quincy project. If when the test comes back, it's determined that the land's unusable, what can be done that way?
So if it comes back that it's bad, the land's bad, there's a number of things you can do. It doesn't mean you can't ever do anything there again, but you might have to cap it. And a cap could be either a concrete cap, so if you're putting a building on it, the parking lot and the foundation could be a cap. Or we might have to put 12 or 18 inches of soil down so that there's enough of a vapor barrier. So there are things that can be done, and that's why I can't estimate the remediation cost yet, because I don't know what we're going to find there. So we had we had an inquiry that someone wanted an acre of that, and they wanted to put a building on it. So in that case, you would probably cap it all with concrete, then for the parking lot in the building. But if you wanted to park there, that takes it to a whole different level, and so then you'd be probably 2 feet of soil minimum to be able to get it to a residential level. So there's various options. When we get those back, we'll analyze it, and depending on its future use, even if it's mixed use or we have a buyer, then that's how we'll determine how we address that.
So do you already have the money for the remediation for the Quinty?
We have spent, let me get to the right page here. We've spent 900,000 of the 1.5 million that we had. So we have 600,000 remaining to address any contamination, to level it off, to fill the basement. If it comes back that it's going to cost more than that, then we'll seek additional funding. But right now, we have about 600,000.
Big red flag when they said that's the worst they've ever seen.
But the upside is that asbestos is an airborne, and unlike at EMI or even at the Hammermill site, former Hammermill site, that was a different kind of contamination that actually
permeates.
Right. So it may be that Quinty's not as bad as we think. Now, there are 2 30,000-gallon oil tanks buried near where the smokestack was. And those will have to be pulled out, and that's where they tested because it could be some leakage around there. So those are the kinds of things we don't know yet.
And those are massive tanks. I think
30,000 is...
one we pull out of EMI was only, what, 8,000?
Yeah, the one in this picture at EMI was 8,500 gallon. So take that picture and multiply it.
So does that estimate include the 1.5 that was put aside for, they said it was a park, or is that just for remediation in general?
So we had 1.5 to start with. We've spent 900, so we have 600 left to finish off Quinty. And if it's more than 600, then we'll have to seek additional funding.
So the city put another 1.5.
We have 1.5 million ARP.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
For development of the space if we're able to do.
Okay.
Or something like that.
I wasn't aware of that. I apologize.
Oh, okay.
So no, it does not include that additional 1.5.
I have
But
great
it's good to
confidence.
know it's there.
I have great confidence in what you're doing, but if we're gonna put a park there and it's gonna be young kids playing on that park, I'm making darn sure that ground is
Well, we
holy.
would never get permits for it unless it was, the DEP won't give us permits
primary
unless we make it to the standards, so. And after all that the neighbors have been through and living next to that, I wouldn't want to
yeah.
do it any other way.
haphazardly. Perfect.
So we're at a point with two of these 5 projects where we, well, if you go to the last page, these 5 projects total over $60 million, and that's just with the phase 1, if you will. It's just with that 78,000. It's just with the first 40 homes that Hands is doing. Does not include any additional development at Quinty, and it does not include a larger greenhouse, for example, at Slovakia. So if we just did it today, as we originally scoped it out, that's $60 million being invested in the city of Erie in just 5 projects. That's pretty big.
Pretty good, too.
Yeah, that's huge, really. You have committed to date, not including that additional 1.5 or anything else that I'm not aware of, 5.5 million. So you've leveraged that 5 million into 60 million. It's a pretty good return. But we still need a tad more. So at EMI, all of those grants are are reimbursement grants. So we have to submit, do the work, pay for it, and then submit for reimbursement. So we are asking that you consider a $2 million grant out of your ARP Brownfields Fund to help us get started, so we can continue that work without delay. And
Is that over and above the
So
1.5 you just found out about?
Yeah, that was a different project.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you
Stick with me here.
I'm going slowly.
So if you recall, we dedicated $5 million to brownfield cleanups in the city. So that $5 million has been set aside already in the Economic Development Department here. So that's the $5 million that we're ready now to deploy to EMI and to Berry.
Myrtle, to the Berry
yeah.
project.
So the funds the line item's already been created, the account's already been created, it's already been allocated, it's sitting there. And this is exactly what was envisioned when we talked about, when we created that. So we're at a point where we're ready to move ahead. We're finally at demo,
Yeah,
finally.
so you'll get an official request, but we wanted to review with you what we've done so far, where these projects stand.
Just to, so you're gonna get to work, what, January?
It's probably been close to a year.
And that was already like in the context of the ARP. So when the number 5 million was come up with, like, these were the projects that were envisioned for that, right? I mean,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we knew it was gonna be a long haul, and that we were gonna need, I think we're pretty close to, I mean, it seems like it's been a long time, but I think we knew demo was about a year from when we toured, and we're there now.
So it's not more money, but it's specifically how it would be used, is that correct?
It's just pulling from a fund that you've already allocated.
Yeah, it's bringing the first request for that category that we created.
Anybody have any
We're
questions on these
having,
projects?
or the mayor's press conference on Thursday is going to include coverage of the Playbook. So are these projects in the investment playbook?
Actually, they are. Every single one of them.
Okay.
Because they're all in the inner city, they're all in target neighborhoods. They are either neighborhood investment or, you know, economic investment. So, yeah, they align perfectly, and they're good examples of, and if you read the playbook, they're literally specifically highlighted. So, yeah, we're excited about how much progress we've made in a short time on all these. And I think it's a lot of projects that are really going to transform those individual neighborhoods.
And Chris, when might we see this on an agenda, do you think?
So I'm looking at probably second meeting in November, maybe the first. We'll have to see it.
In November?
It'll be in November, yeah.
In November, okay.
Yeah. I didn't want to just put it on agenda, obviously, without bringing you up to speed on what we've done so far and where we're heading, and so yeah, it'll be here soon.
And I was just looking, I mean, there are examples in Erie of successful remediation of toxic sites for reuse. I mean, I'm thinking, I just looked it up. Remember the Superfund site on Love Road in Mill Creek that I think became the Mill Creek golf course, yeah. And I believe the Convention Center Authority used the ramp as a cap. Am I right about that? Where they had some stuff from GAF?
The old GAF site was needed an 18-inch vapor barrier with soil to be able to make that a usable site. And that took a long time and a lot of money. That was pretty bad. So the Quintee site was actually owned by GAF at the end.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So, and when we bought that site, we also bought a little brick house at the foot of the bayfront because they had their own water intake coming back and forth, which we have since donated to PennDOT because we don't want it. So these are all intertwined, everything.
Will any of this, with the Inflation Reduction Act, which concentrates, includes, helps to address climate change, would there be any funding in that for this? I don't know. Maybe it's too far afield or something, but.
I don't think so. We've been scouring the different state and federal opportunities.
Okay.
We do have an application into the Federal Economic Development Agency and the Appalachian Regional Commission Agency, both for $1 million each. We've talked to both of them multiple times, and they're aware of the projects, and we, fingers crossed, but we feel good about those applications.
Are there any other questions? Does everybody want to get home and watch the Cleveland game? I know the person to my left does. So, 7:30 for that game? Okay.
No, and the tours you guys gave months ago, so I mean, I think that had me well prepared for expecting it.
Yeah. Anytime, right now during demolition, we can't tour the inside, but, if anybody wants to see anything, any of the documents that we've been working on, Dave's team has been busy. We have weekly and bi-weekly meetings with various entities. We don't want this to slow down in any way.
One thing that's interesting is with the building, we used a firm called Cadnetics to scan the building because of the heights, because of the places they're harder to get to, because some of the roofs are not in good structural condition. They scanned the building and they created a Revit file, a three-dimensional file, and we're using that to actually construct the building. So we can show you, actually, I could have sent an email of it, but you can look around the building and walk through it, and then we we can make our construction drawings from that. So it saved us tons of time, and we still rented a lift to get up to the structure and look at the steel and look at the what needs to be replaced and et cetera. But it really saved a lot by scanning the building. It hasn't been done a lot in Erie, but it was a really interesting process to go through.
I haven't even seen that yet.
Yeah, we'll look at it.
We are trying to retain and save as much steel from what we demo is possible for reuse, either on the exterior or in different points, just as much from a historical perspective as it's probably not going to be a cost savings, but
My friend in Bronxville just took a picture of beams from Amthor Steel Erie at the train station the other day. So we are one of the makers of the world. Before we informally adjourn, I wanted to make sure, Tina and Chris, you know our new planning director, Dave Forrest, back there. You know him, and I know and he knows David. So, and council met him at our most recent meeting. So, is there anything else?
Nice job.
Okay. Thanks,
thank
everybody.
you all for your time. Appreciate it.
No.